Okay, so in this shape, we're going to say var input file name equals, and then we're going to give it the name of a message. So our corresponding message, we have here update employee and new employee. So this would be MSG and then new employee, which is this one. Okay, then I use the parentheses, which is the syntax for accessing promoted fields. And within BizTalk, there are many other fields, oftentimes called context fields. And context fields are basically metadata, i.e. data about the data. And so every message that comes into BizTalk has these context fields. So if we just put the parentheses and kind of scroll through here, you can see the BTF2, that stands for the BizTalk framework. That was an idea that I think really didn't catch on like they thought it would. But anyway, there's other fields here, BTS for BizTalk server. And then there are fields that are specific to certain protocols. And so since we're doing a file receive, you'll notice here there are various fields associated with the type of file. And one of those is called file received file name. And so that's the field that we want to take out of the context of the message and put into one of our normal variables in our program. Okay? And so what we want to do then is take this shape, and let's give a little more room here. We'll call this get new file name, get new employee file name. Just to confirm, our message here was message new employee. So here we have message new employee. Okay, we're going to copy this whole shape and paste here. And this message is called new emp2, which actually we didn't want to keep. That should be new update employee. Okay, here's a good example. This will help me illustrate one other concept I mentioned before. You can't change a message when it's tied to a port. You can't change the schema that it's tied to. So a while ago, I actually did change this trying to illustrate something. And right now, this message and this port are both tied to a schema called, you can kind of see it right here, called new employee. And so to actually change that, I have to break the connection here, this little line, between the message and the port, hit delete, and now I can change my message to what I wanted it to be, which was update employee. Okay, and then now the two will not connect because this says I'm an update employee and this says I'm a new employee. So you have to now come to the request on the operation in the port and change the schema there as well. So we want schema employee update, and then now the two will connect together. Okay, so that was a little side lesson there. And so now here we're receiving message update employee. And so in this box we want to say message update employee and grab the name of the file received and put in this variable called var input file name. Then at the end of our orchestration we're going to say here var input file name is equal to var input file name. Okay, and then let's call this trace 999 because this is the end of the program. I put my trace message here. And now to actually run this, I'm going to need some fake data. So I'm going to do that off video. What I'm going to do is go generate a couple of data files based on my two schemas here. So here's what I did. I did the, just real quick, I'll recap. We've done this before. I go to schema properties. I gave it a directory name on the disk, and I gave it a name, new employee data 2, whatever. And then on the disk, I created a imp new data 2, which if I look at that, that's the schema for a new employee, and then this is the one for the update employee. And I put that in a directory here called sample employee sample files. And so when I run this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my file drop and I'm going to copy one of these two files, and I want to show you how the orchestration name can actually get the file name and use it inside the orchestration. So to get this all to work now, we have to, of course, deploy our orchestration and do a quick little binding here. So I guess I'll do that on the video. We'll do here deploy solution, yes. I'm just thinking in my mind, I've set up my strong name file, I believe. And so here we have one error, a listen with an inactivable receive cannot have a timeout. Okay. Oh, I think these are not activating receives right now. So right here we have to set this activate true. Yes, activate true. Okay, so what's making sense is here, if these receives are actually activating the orchestration, the delay column really makes no sense. So when we talked about the delay, that would be when you have a correlating receive, not an activating receive. So what we want to do is highlight and delete this little section right here. Delete that, and then click and delete the whole section. So now we have two receives and no delay. So let's build that. Okay, no compile errors. So now I'll do a deploy. Okay, now I got a very wild error here. Let me just show you this in case you ever see it. It says it cannot connect to the BizTalk management database, and it talks about security. And then also when I went to the BizTalk admin console, it says the database is not available. Well, since I'm running all this on my laptop, occasionally what I do is I will actually turn off my SQL servers to save tons of memory. So right here, here's my database. I'm going to connect to it. So that's not letting me connect either because it's down. So I'm going to go to my icon tray and bring up this little tool. Okay, this tool right here. And I'm actually going to start the SQL server that I need. So it is now started. And again, the reason, let me show you why I take this down. If I bring up my Windows Task Manager, if I let this run for like a long time of the day, sort by memory here, see I'll see SQL Server, and I don't know if it's a memory leak or what, but I'll sometimes see 500,000 K here. So half a gigabyte of my machine is sometimes just doing SQL Server. So when I'm not using BizTalk or SQL, I often shut down the SQL Server and the BizTalk server for that matter. Okay, so now I should be able to connect to that database. Yep, so now I'm going to go just redeploy again. Took a few seconds, and it says down here in the lower left corner, deploy was successful. Now if we go to BizTalk admin and then refresh here, zoom on down to applications. And by the way, when I deployed this, I forgot to actually set the application name. So by default, all applications that don't have an application name are going to be. Before we do that, I have to show you one more thing. I also, when I shut down SQL, that took down the SSO. So I also have to bring up the SSO task, or else things are not going to work very well. So BizTalk relies on SSO, of course, to get things done. And then the BizTalk service task itself here, you can either, I'm in the Windows Admin Services utility, which of course with BizTalk, you can also come down here and do that under host instances. You can start your server here, or you can start it here. So we can just prove that it works both ways. Come here and hit refresh. You can see it's now running. So now I'm going to go to applications. Don't know why we got that. And let's refresh that as well. Now, my new thing was called employee something or another, and by default, the only everything that you don't put in a specific application is going to go into this default application called BizTalk Application 1. Okay, so here's my listen and delay demo orchestration. And sorry, the name of the project happened to be called Property Schema Demo, which was a dumb name for my project. So we need to do a little binding here. So we need to have a receive port and a receive location. We've done this before, so I'm just going to kind of fly through this. So we need a receive employee, receive location, new, rloc employee. It's going to be a flat file. We're going to configure it, and we're going to give it a folder, which is going to be my C drive, BizTalk demos, add employee file drop. We're receiving XML files. Okay, and then we need this to be an XML pipeline, not a pass-through, so that it actually does read and process the XML. And that should be all. That should be all we need. Okay, so now we need to bind our orchestration to this port. Let's make sure our port or receive location is enabled. And now we'll do our binding. So we go back to our orchestration here, and then go to Properties, Binding, set our host, and then here click on the None and change it to Receive Employee. Then we can start that orchestration. While that's getting ready, okay, it's started. Here's our two sample files. Here's our file drop. So I'm going to drop that file called imp new data 2. File has been received. I want to go to hat to see what's happening there first. So in hat I almost always do the queries most recent 100. You can see my orchestration started and completed at this time, 3:03 in the afternoon. And let's go look at the trace file. So over here's our trace, and then here's the magic we wanted to show you. The trace 999 says the name of the file that you dropped was BizTalk demos add employee on C:, employee file drop imp new data 2.xml. So in your orchestration you could actually test to see, for instance, if it was an XML or a CSV, or you could actually log this information somewhere. And so sometimes it is nice and useful to be able to see exactly what your input file was, especially when you're debugging and tracing and that type of thing. So how did we do that? Let's just recap what we did in this video. We went to this orchestration, and right after each receive we added a line that says give me the contextual data here, the context data about the file receive location. The name of the field is called received file name. Now let me just show you, how this also ties in. We're going to give you one extra level of detail here. So to do that I have to change, maybe not, hang on, let me think. Yeah, we need to turn on tracking to be able to show you this. So I'm going to go back to BizTalk admin console, go back to that receive location here, actually receive port, and tracking. I want to turn on all flavors of tracking. Okay, this time I will rerun the same orchestration, file drop, and I will drop this file. I guess the other thing we could have done in our orchestration just to prove was that whether we went through this branch or this branch. So we could have a little test here that says whether this was a new or an update type situation. So I'm going to go over here to hat, check it again. It's at 3:07:15. It ran again. And now what I want to do is save this data to the disk. And sometimes you have to wait about a minute, depending on how usually your SQL agent jobs run about every 1 minute. So if you say here, saved all tracked messages, and I've got it set to go to hat saved messages, we'll see if we have to wait again or not. See, it says no data was saved. So that is either because the SQL agent jobs are not running, or because I didn't wait for them to run. So I'm going to go to SQL real quick. I'll just do that on the video so you can see this. And you can see here SQL agent is actually stopped. So I need to start SQL agent, because these little BizTalk jobs that run are very important, especially for moving messages around between different BizTalk databases. So I'm going to stop the video, wait about 1 or 2 minutes, and then try to save that message again. Okay, I kept retrying the right click save, and again after waiting about 1 or 2 minutes you can see now here the data has been saved. And so now let's go to the disk where that data would be, and I created a place here called, it's actually under my PO system, hat saved messages, and it's 11/26/1509, which is this time. And so now one of these messages, has the word out for the extension, and one has XML. And you'll notice if I actually expand the file name, one is actually the message, the other is what's called the context of the message. So if I open the context of the message, I'm going to double click on it and let it open in the browser. then this is what you see in the browser. So now I want to find, for instance, let's do Control F and look for file name. And you see here this property called received file name, and then it gives you C BizTalk add employee blah 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 blah. Well, that's exactly what we have in our orchestration. So I just want you to compare this. Notice it says here received file name. So if we go back to our orchestration, here you have received file name. Now what we don't see in our context message in the browser there is that it has a suffix of the word file. So that would have to do probably with the namespace somewhere here. See, notice it says file dash properties. So for instance, here's another property called file creation time. So if we go to our orchestration, what do you expect you would be able to do here? You could say var file created equals message new employee file dot, and then there's file creation time. So any of these messages in the context you can take in your program and actually have access to them. So that's a very powerful feature of BizTalk.